Well, would you look at the time? It's Daikaiser o'clock, baby. Set 9 is finally coming out in Japan, and it is time to break down the set as usual with these first impressions videos. Sorry, again, I've not been posting too much. That is because I've been stuck editing this one video I filmed back in December in Japanese that's like over an hour of footage. It'll be out soon, it's almost done, so I don't think I need to talk about it too much. And I've also been traveling to Bushi Expo a lot. Thanks to everyone that came through in the Indonesia. And then I'll be also in the Philippines, literally flying out probably maybe even by the time this is going up. Who knows? But anyway, enough rambling. Today we are here to talk about this new set, which I'm honestly very excited about because, of course, Daikaiser is back in standard. That is the most important part of it all. But also there's quite a lot of interesting stuff to talk about in this set, especially for like dark states and the new generics and all the Keter triple rares. And some stuff that I do feel like maybe is getting discussed in interesting ways in the community, but I don't necessarily feel the same way. So let's get into it and break it down. Set 9 set breakdown, first impressions. And of course, as usual, we have all the nations except for Lyrical this time because it's not an anime set. And we basically have encounters of course, Daikaiser, Minerva, Azel, and of course there's also a Regulus piece that is also basically support for encounters. And then in terms of high rarity, there are quite a lot of secrets in this set. I think we're starting to hit like record numbers of secret rares. There's also the Bravern collab, which I'll talk about in the Brandt Gate segment, so you can look forward to that. And we will also, of course, show you the high rarities. There's also the Bravern high rarity stuff as well, the handshake rare and whatnot. And then of course you have your FFRs. Some of them do look quite nice. I like Heart Luru's one. It fits the border quite well. And then Daikaiser and Shadow Kaiser, probably will pick up one of each of these just because, you know, I want to own one of each copy of my boys. And then of course Minerva, the Keter generic looks really good in FFR this time around as well. Then you have your FRs. I think the main chase FR this time will definitely be the Toys order with Eva in it. I think Eva in it being a big reason why it will be a chase card. And then in terms of other FRs, nothing too crazy, I think. And then of course our secrets. There's also a reprint of Dayusha in this set, so that's another important thing. But we have the Shivilt, the Heart Luru, as well as Daikaiser. That's going to be the only secret that I probably buy in this set. Minerva one is really good. This one's probably like the prettiest one. Azel one is also very pretty just because of the way the background is drawn. And then we have Celius as well as Sky Ruler. Berg, the Sky Ruler. So that's our secrets. And then there's also the character energies for the actual Vanguard OG characters of Aichi, Kai, Misaki, Kamui, Ren, and Asaka. So very nice to see them in their grown-up attire. This is them as adults in the modern world. Very nice. Who is this lady that is in Kamui's art though? Who's that holding the freaking, who's this? Who's holding this, huh? Very interesting. So then of course you have your silver rares for all the triples and doubles, but that's kind of like my preferred high rarity. And that's about it. So let's get into the actual nations and talk about Dragon Empire first. So Dragon Empire this time around is focused on Shivilt. Maybe I'll put my camera in the middle here. So Shivilt is the focus of this set, which is basically like the demonic dragon that possessed Varga, I guess, and turn it into Rasetsu. And then we have support for him as the other triple rare, and finally a generic. And the generics this set basically bring back old double rares and rares for the most part and kind of like combine them into one card, except for Brandt Gate, which is a little bit different. So we'll talk about all that, but most of the other support is either somewhat generic or supports other cards from decks that are from, like, you know, these sets like Shoujo Doji and whatnot. So Shivilt introduces the brain rot state, as we've been calling it in the community, which basically allows you as like mental pollution. So you can soul blast 1 and choose a rear guard equal to your opponent's Vanguard's grade, and for that turn they become brain rot state, and then at the end of the turn they retire, but they also get plus 5k power. So if your opponent's grade 3, you can choose 3. If your opponent's grade 2, if you're going first on turn 3, then you can choose just 2. Sorry, I forgot to put my shirt on. It's a little chilly. So you're already doing this kind of like great nature gimmick in a way, which allows you to already just buff up certain things. But then the other effect is end of the battle that he attacked, you can almost 1, and then you choose your Vanguard or one of your brain rot state rear guards and stand it, and turn its drive to 0 for that turn, but give it plus 10k. But if your one's grade 3 or greater, then you can choose 2. So this means you can choose both the Vanguard and the rear guard at the same time, making 5 attacks. So his on attack effects are all once per turn, so you can't like loop this effect or anything, but it's still pretty good for 5 attacks. And you know, it is drive 0, but it's still an additional Vanguard swing. And then he also says that during your end phase, once per turn, when your brain rot state rear guard retires, you draw 1. So it's not like great nature where you draw for each one you retire or anything. It's just once per turn, but it's still pretty good because you have other ways to make sure that that retire does not become a minus. One of them is this Desolate Flare Dragon. So he says if your Vanguard is a Unison Dragon, which this guy is, then this card gets the following abilities. He CBs 1 when played on rear to look at top 7 for a Unison Dragon or a normal order that isn't a Regulus piece and add it to your hand. And then if you didn't add 1, then you just draw 1, which is also good. CB 1 to draw 1 is also fine. When he attacks, he also gets plus 5k and Energy Blast 3 to choose one of your rear guards. And when it would retire, it goes to your hand instead. So basically, from the rear guards you choose from this, you basically get to retire 1 to draw 1 and then retire 1 for it to go back to your hand. And then some people are also playing like Shura and stuff, but I think just like using this guy twice will also do the job. Just keep in mind that energy does get a little bit limited. From what I've seen from what people are playing, like this deck does have this double rare, which is basically a Combine Rusher. So it's like when you play a normal order, if your Vanguard's a Unison Dragon, Combos 1, this calls itself from drop. And then he also gets plus 5k to all of your Unison Dragons if your opponent's grade 3 or greater. And if he's in the Brainrot state, then he also gets 5k himself. And then the other card that I did see quite a few people play is this grade 1 rare, who says back row rear guard circle once per turn when a unit in the same column as her stands. If she's in the Brainrot state, then she also stands. So that way, like, your front row's restanding will also be still boosted. So her I've seen in my friend Taunt's lists, which I think is, you know, I trust that guy, so I feel like that's a pretty good play. There's also the ride line, of course, for it too. I really love the grade 0. This, I think, really goes down as like one of the best Dragon Empire starters, period. Like, look at how cute he is. He's just a little guy. Then the grade 1, the Sperodo, is a, when ridden over Civilt, you reveal the grade 3 Civilt from ride deck in order to search your deck for the order, which is like the happy days of Civilt as well as Sperodo, and add it to your hand. And then that order is a grade 2, so you probably ride grade 2 first. The grade 2 says when you attack, you can retire rear guard and then reveal your Chivalry grade 3 from your ride deck to draw 1 and get plus 5k. And as you know, a lot of stuff when retired doesn't truly retire in this deck, because the order also says that if your Vanguard is Sperodo or Chivalry, you can play this. To put it to Soul, choose your Vanguard, give it the effect for the turn. Once per turn Vanguard circle, if outside of your main phase, your non-sentinel unit would be retired, you can add it back to your hand instead. So now you have 3 ways to recycle things, or like to get back cost for things. So you draw 1, you get back 1, and you get back 1 basically. So everything kind of refunds, which is pretty good. But of course, if that was all it did, it wouldn't necessarily be that great, because that's just breaking even and giving you soul. In drop, this also allows you to, when your card stands by your Civil's ability, you can bind this and discard 1 from hand in order to make your Vanguard's drive 1 for the turn. So just when you thought this would restand with 0 drive, it becomes 1. So you go 2 and 1, but you do discard for it because this effect doesn't require any discard. So it is kind of nice how flexible it is. It's like, especially if the game goes long and you start running low on deck, you can actually just like not give yourself the drive in that sense. So you don't have to bind this or discard 1 in that sense either. So I think the deck is overall like kind of decent. It's like Latifah's greatest merchant, basically, is what people are calling it, because you basically just like, you play this order every turn, right? And then you get to use Latifah every turn to Soul Blast 1 top 5 and like call this thing that works when called from anywhere on rear, and then same goes for her as well to like dig for your other pieces. So it does feel like the deck's gonna be pretty decent. Like a 5 attack deck going second or a 4 attack deck going first is always gonna be pretty good. Also distributes power, so the scaling should be okay. Plusing isn't too crazy. I don't think it's like the levels of like Virgila or Varga pressure, because this deck doesn't really have like crazy removal, right? That's like one of the things that makes Virgila so strong is the bind. It really hurts a lot of decks like Buff Sagara, and like Buff Sagara has a lot of retire too. So this is like the first, like I think, Dragon Empire deck since like what, El Calibra, that doesn't have a lot of removal. It has self removal instead, so it's kind of interesting. The generic combines Tensha Stead together with Gojo, which is kind of interesting. So when it boosts your Vanguard, if your opponent's grade 3 or greater, this gets 5k. And if his boosted attack hits, you can retire him to countercharge 1. And at the end of the attack that he boosted, otherwise, you can Combos 1 and retire him to search your deck for a card with the same name as your Vanguard added to your hand. So most of the time, your opponent will not want to let you hit with this, because then that gives you the option to either CC or do the deck search. And that means that you should mainly think about this card as a 13k Vanguard booster that will also search your deck for a Persona Ride copy. Some decks don't care about that as much. I think there are some decks that can afford it, or just like bad synergy. So like Varga, for example, on turns where you can't pay the Candlemas for this, you just have to be forced to retire it if it didn't hit when it boosted. And that doesn't feel very good, right? When everything else in your deck does something when retired. It is important that because it's a grade 1, it has good synergy with Felheart. So that means you can revive this as well after you retire it for either of the effects, which is also quite strong. So that synergy is definitely very appreciated. And I think in Virgila, this will be somewhat decent, because Virgila until now played a top 7 grade 3 searcher. But the thing is that this only searches a copy of your Vanguard. So it's once you are on the rewrite form, this is really good. but if you're not, then this won't find it. The grade 3 searcher run now is basically used to find the first rewrite form, because after that you can start triple driving and start like having easier access to it. So I don't think it'll replace it, but it'll definitely be an interesting option, especially in decks that aren't as CB heavy, just for like the last effect and being able to be a 13k booster, I guess. In terms of other stuff, we have Shoujo Doji support. This is basically like a when soul charged goes to bind zone, kind of like the multi-attacker, and when this is called on rear or put to Guardian Circle, if it hangs a Doji grade 3, then gets 5k power, 5k shield. If it was called from bind zone, it becomes a 15k shield. So honestly, a pretty good option. Like, it's free, and the fact that you can call it out, you know, from Shoujo Doji's effect in order to then have a 15k shield is quite good. So I do feel like it is quite nice, and even from hand it's 10k shield, so overall it really doesn't feel too bad. And the fact that it gets the 5k power too means that it's a bit easier to get over your defensives, like when your opponent hits them, especially before the persona turn. So I feel like this card might see some play. It feels like it does everything for quite free, and I feel like it would have been, I always thought that it was weird that we only had one card that automatically goes to soul for Shoujo Doji, or like automatically goes from soul to bind for Shoujo Doji. So there's another one of those. Then for Koti Blaze, this, like, Koti Blaze just got an insane double rare and festival booster. So this one is like when he attacks, if Vanguard's a Koti Blaze, or if it just has one clan, you can choose a card from your drop that is different name from him that's grade 2 or lower, put it to your soul, and if your opponent's grade 3 or greater, this gets 5k. So it only puts grade 2s or lower, so that means you cannot soul charge your Koti Blaze itself, but it helps you set up the grade 2s that you can restand with Koti Blaze's effect. And then at end of battle, this attack, you can boss 1 and draw 1 and put this to soul or bind it. So that part is pretty good. CB1 to draw 1 and then go to soul or bind means that, especially in Koti Blaze, going to soul means that you can then set that up for future restand too, which is quite good. In terms of clan only, this is basically the self bind is good for Vermilion. So there's also kind of like Vermilion support. Again, only puts grade 2 or lower into the soul, so that means that you won't be able to like set up the other Vermilion or anything with this either, but I do feel like the self-bind is somewhat appreciated as another self-binding option. And then I think a lot of the other stuff in the set is basically generic support, so it's like quite a few interesting generic cards. So I think most nations got them as well. So like there's this one that's like if your opponents check the trigger, then this gets 5k power, 5k shield. There's another Malroom one, but it's like if it's retired, it goes to soul and gets 5k, so it's nothing too fancy. This is like if your card went from soul to drop that same name as your Vanguard, get 10k. Kind of interesting. Is this also Koti Blaze support? Like, it's continuous, which is kind of interesting too. So yeah, it does feel like this is Koti Blaze support, but I don't think it really wanted that exactly. Then I think every nation got this as well. When you guard with it, you can discard, reveal a Persona Shield ticket from your hand, and then choose a grade 2 or lower unit. Oh, you can choose units equal to how many Persona Shield tickets you revealed from your hand, and for that battle, they get the effect that when they would be retired from Guardian Circle, they go to soul instead. So it's like you can reveal as many as you want. So it's really, there's only one card that makes them, but you already can reveal multiple. Interesting. Then this thing is like if you don't have any, your opponent doesn't have any rear guards in the same column as this gets boost and gets plus 2k if your opponent's on grade 3. Like also something similar is there. This order I really don't rate highly. It's like you choose one of your grade 1 or lower units, and for each of your opponent's empty rearguard circles, give it plus 2k. Like there's a grade 1 Stoicheia order that gives plus 5k for every grade 1 on your board to a rearguard that can be used on turn 1. And this is only usable on turn 3 and only gives 2k. Like what is, and your opponent can like deny this? Like this literally feels like one of the worst orders ever printed. I think it generally is quite bad considering that it's like in the same set as like, I don't know, even this order, right? Then I think this was also in every nation. It's like when you play a Blitz order, Energy Blast 2, then this goes from rear to Guardian Circle and gets plus 5k shield. And then I think this is also is like front row, start of main phase, Soul Boss 1, Energy Blast 3. Oh, retire all of your opponent's rearguards in the same column as this unit. That's not too bad. Oh, yours and your opponent's? So she also gets rid of herself? Interesting. So she's like a field nuke for a whole column. I don't know if that would be played, but at least it's like applicable generically. The most interesting generic is the one that every nation got, which is this like the soul in one. So they all say the same thing. When you attack with it, if this turn you persona road, for that battle get plus 10k. So it's already not too bad. And if one has 1 or less rear guards, so the condition is a bit tough for Dragon Empire for some decks like Sibylt, you can put a card with the same name as this grade 2 to your soul to make his crit 2. So for decks like that have really crazy like front row scaling, this might be interesting. Because it's Persona Ride locked, that means Stride decks can't use this, because I thought this would be kind of cool with like crest scaling, but unfortunately that can't be the case. But I feel like there are some decks where like creating the extra soul is appreciated, And then having something like a payoff for just making that soul is also obviously very good. So I can't think of any decks that would play these grade 2s right now, but they do seem interesting in concept. So I think if you have a main nation, I would pick them up just in case, because you don't really want to regret not having them later down the line. Overall, Dragon Empire feels pretty average. I think it's quite hard to gauge for now how good Civil will be. Not a lot of the Japanese community has been making too much noise about it. I've seen other people make more noise about it instead. Personally speaking, I think the deck seems decent. There's like the generic is also decent. People were upset that I was a little bit too kind in my festival booster rating, so I think I'll be a bit more harsh this time around. But even then, is it average enough for a 3 out of 5 for Dragon Empire this time? I feel like it's not that. I guess I see average as bad. Like, to me, it's like there's a bit more to it than that. Maybe it's a 4 out of 5. I feel like it's actually like there's some pretty decent cards in here, and all the double rares feel quite good, obviously. So we'll give a 4 out of 5 to Dragon Empire. I think I'll be a bit more lenient here because I do believe in this deck's potential. I do think it's actually being a little bit slept on just because it's like it being 5 attacks with good scaling just feels pretty good to me. Like the fact that the restanding rears get plus 10k too with Sybil just sounds good to me. All right, moving on to Dark States. I think this one is probably one of the highest rated parts of this set. I played against Heart Luru before the release. One of my friends was proxying it, and honestly, the deck feels very good. It's something that I would really recommend to new players, especially because I feel like it's a deck that the things it does is super straightforward, but it does really, really strong things. So you're sort of like, it feels weird to say it, but like carried by the deck power. But that's a good thing because that means that you can really focus on what your opponent is doing and adapt. And that I think is like the biggest part of becoming a Vanguard, like a better Vanguard player. So I really feel like this is like, I don't know. I don't think it's going to be a top tier deck until the current top tiers get restricted. Like I think Bat, Bav in particular need to go, especially Bat really needs to go. Buff Saga, I still feel like needs another hit. It's just really hard to say where. But once that happens, I feel like this deck can really, really compete. I mean, even now it can compete. Sorry, that's too harsh, but I feel like it'll be a top contender in that sense. So we have Heart Luru, we have the generic, which is like basically Gungunram, but with the pony effect. And then we also have support for Favernil. We have support for Grand Dogma. Grandma, no way. And then we also have some support for other decks. I want to say there was something, right? Or am I bugging? Maybe not. I guess the Heart Luru stuff takes up more space than I thought. So let's talk about Heart Luru first. I do think it's very exciting overall. So the starter is this funny little bear. The Titi is his name, which is a little bit of horseshit naming for English. Then the grade 1 is the Nachu Nachu. So this guy says when you ride over Titi with him, you reveal Heart Luru from your ride deck in order to search your deck for the Toys Are for Kids order, and then you add that to your hand. And when he's behind the Vanguard circle, which the deck spoiler alert calls out from Soul, if this card was placed by card effect and your opponent's grade 3 or greater, if your bind zone does not have this guy TT in it, the grade 0, you can Kamos 1 and then bind the TT from your Soul. You know, search your deck for the Toys Are Made for Kids order and then add it to your hand. So the strong thing is that when you ride this, it searches for the order. Then the grade 2 says when you ride it over the Nachu Nachu, his name is the Coaster Shark, he reveals Heart Luru from your ride deck to search your deck for Toys Are Made for Kids order and add it to your hand. So that's already 2 of the orders you're adding just by the ride line, which is like very similar to Eva in that sense. And then right front row rearguard circle. So all of these cards have specific placements they want to be on. So it's kind of like people were saying, it's like as if Heart Luru made a manual for kids to play with their toys and tells them exactly where to put what. So once per turn, when this finishes attacking your rear guard, if you have the toys order in your order zone, and this turn this card has been placed from rear from soul to rear, you soul boss 1 and stand him, so you can swing into rear and then restand to attack into Vanguard, which basically allows you to, it's kind of like a Aqua Force style attack, so you get to clear out a rear and then swing into Vanguard, which is quite interesting. So these two search you 2 orders. The order itself is very good. It's a grade 1, so you can set it from grade 1. It also has Eva in the art. So if your Vanguard is the Happy Toys, so all of these, this like pink little thing here is Happy Toys basically. So it says this card is a Happy Toys made for kids basically, which is kind of, it's a cool, cute little flavor. So if your Vanguard is a Happy Toys or Heart Luru grade 3 or greater, this card gets the following effects. When put to order zone, look at top 5 cards of your deck, find up to 2 Happy Toys cards, reveal them, put one into your hand and put the rest into soul and shuffle your deck. That's already very good because this is basically like Archite, you know, searching for energy research and then being able to top 5 add a kaiju to hand and drop, right? So it's basically the same thing. And then in order zone, you can choose 2 of this order in your order zone and rest them. And then from your drop, choose any Happy Toys card and put it to the soul. So this means that even if your stuff gets cleared out, you still get to put it back in the soul and then call it out again, which is very strong recursion. And then the grade 3, we'll just talk about Heart Lure first. He says, during your turn, if you have 3 or more of the orders in your order zone, he gives all of your front row units, including himself, plus 5k power. So don't forget that you are doing multi-attacks in this deck too. Then once per turn, you can Energy Blast 3 to choose any number of Happy Toys from your soul equal to how many of the order you have in your order zone and call them to rear. So if you have 4, you get to call 4 for 3 energy. This is, I think, the most energy efficient effect in the game so far. Energy Blast 3 for a +4 is, in all things considered, very ridiculous. So this is already a very powerful effect. And then when he attacks, he counterblast 1. And depending on how many of the toys order you have in your order zone, he does the following. If you have 2 or more, he chooses a front row Happy Toys rearguard and stands it, and also gives it plus 10k for the turn, even if you go first, by the way. So that's also very strong, right? And then second effect is, if you have 3 or more, for that turn, he gives himself plus 5k, and if your opponent's Vanguard's grade 3 or greater, he gets an extra drive as well. So 4 attacks, 3 drives, and also plus 10k scaling to the thing that restands. Like, the plus 10k to the thing that restands is really, really one of the best parts in my opinion. And if you have all 4 of the orders, then he chooses another Happy Toys rearguard in your front row and then stands it and gives it plus 10k as well. So you're doing 5 attacks. Technically with the shark, you're doing 6, right? Because this can swing into a rear, restand, then swing into a Vanguard. And then after that, you can basically restand him again with the Heart Luru. So potentially like 6 attacks with one of them going to a rear. Really good scaling as well. And that's not all. We have the Bravern. This is grade 2 dragon. He's really cute. He basically says, when placed on rear, if you have the toys order in your order zone, counterblast 1, draw 1. And if one is grade 3 or greater, it gets plus 5k for the turn. And left front row rearguard circle, if he was stood by Heart Lure's ability for that turn, he gets a crit. So keep in mind that he gets 5k from the front row buff, so he's already 15. His own effect makes him 20, and then he restands by Heart Luru, becomes 30. Persona becomes 40. So this scaling is pretty big in this deck too. So he's 30 maximum when your opponent is not grade 3, which is interesting. The crazy part is that the crit gain also doesn't care about your opponent either. So if you just restand this on the, like this, you know, the 2 order effect, then you also can have him swing with a crit too. So that's very powerful. Then we have the giant Fuafua. When he's placed on rear, you Soul Blast 2, a little bit of a steeper cost, but he chooses from drop or from face-up damage zone the toys order and adds it to your hand. And if you chose from damage zone, put the top card of your damage zone into, or top card of your deck into your damage zone. So even if you damage check it, even if you discard it for ride cost, he will get it back to you for 2 soul. It is a bit expensive, but he does get it back. And then right front row rearguard circle. So he clashes for the same placement as the shark. When he stood by Heart Luru's effect, if your Vanguard, by your Heart Luru's Vanguard, sorry, for that turn he gets the effect that when you would attack, your opponent has to guard with 2 cards from hand at the same time, where they cannot guard otherwise, and also gets plus 10k. So again, this also does not care about your opponent's grade. So you're either getting a crit or getting a battle door on turn 3 going first, which is a very strong thing. And we're still not done. We have this really strong little horse, the block horse. Right back row rearguard circle, he gets intercept, and he can intercept from the back row. And if you have the toys order in your order zone, he gets plus 5k shield. So he's a back row intercepting 10k shield as well. So this deck really does feel like it just has everything. And that's not all. The best card of them all is the Pika Pika Bunny. This is one of the best ones in my opinion, because she says when placed on rear from anywhere, by the way, if your order zone has a toys order, you look at the top 3 cards of your deck, put 1 into soul, and then shuffle the rest. This also is kind of cool because if you just play the order, like even as just a vanilla, because you can play it even if you don't have a Heart Lure Vanguard, but if you just play it, just to use this to like fill up your soul, like top 3, call something from soul, and then like if you can somehow spam call this from soul to rear, or like from anywhere to rear over and over again, you can like deck thin like crazy. So top 3 to put something to soul for free sounds really good, and the fact that it's from anywhere is also very strong. But then left back or rear guard circle, when the happy toys in the same column as this unit stands by your card's ability, you can stand this unit, and if you did, at the end of the turn, she will retire herself. But that's not really a problem because your order can put her back to soul, so that's also pretty good. So this deck really feels like every unit is very strong. I feel like I on reveal kind of underestimated how good it is, but then after I played against it, I was really surprised. So I do think Heart Uluru should definitely not be underestimated. This deck will be very good, I think, and one of the best ones from this set period. But then of course we have a bit of other support. Favernil got this interesting card that basically says when placed from hand on rear, you can reveal the original Favernil from your ride deck, and then to search your deck, or if either reveal or if your Vanguard is that Favernil, you soul boss 1, will search your deck for a Favernil grade 3 or greater and put it to your soul, and then shuffle your deck. And then when you boost a grade 3 or greater for that battle, it gets plus 2k, and if your soul has 13 or more total grades of dark states, then you choose a unit, give it 5k for the turn. And if you need a reminder, the new Favernil, I guess, basically has a soul effect that at the end of your turn, if your Vanguard is the original Favernil, he will ride himself as rest. So then that way you'll be usable for the next turn. So sounds pretty good. I mean, for Favernil itself, seems good. Then Grand Dogma double rare is middle back or rear guard circle, and during your battle phase, if your Grand Dogma grade 3 greater Vanguard is placed or stands, soul boss 1 retire this for that turn. Your infernal units will get plus 5k. So that means that once you hit the Grand Dogma, or if she restands, she's gonna be, you get a big buff, but only once per turn because he has to retire himself. And when you guard with him, if your Vanguard is sacrifice glass, you can choose up to 3 cards in your hand and discard any number of them. And for every card that you discarded for this cost, for that battle, this gets plus 10k shield. I need the Grand Dogma chads in chat to actually tell me if this is good or not, because I don't think I've ever used Grand Dogma. And it got like a little bit of support here and there, but I was never like too impressed with it to really give it a try. So let me know in the comments below. But then we got a couple other generics. I'll kind of skip over the other ones that we had here. I guess they're all kind of like still relevant to the nation. So this one's like when called from soul to rear, for that turn, she gets the effect end of turn go back to soul. When this is called from hand to rear, you put a card from hand to soul. If your Vanguard's grade 3 or greater, for that turn, get 5k. Not too bad, I guess. You get to set up the soul, but it doesn't, you know, you do minus. This is the 5k power, 5k shield gainer if your opponent checks a trigger. If you have 6 or more soul during your turn back row, then this gets boost as a grade 3 and plus 2k power. So I do feel like we got a bunch of these as well. When you order, this one allows you to choose a grade 1 or greater unit card from your hand and reveal it and send it to the bottom of the deck. Then look at top 7 for a grade -1 unit card from the thing you put back to bottom deck and call it. So it's kind of like a DIY time leap. I like the art of it though, the little like cool clockwork. This is the Blitz order, Energy Blast 2 to get 5k shield thing that goes from rear to guardian circle. When your opponent's rear guard is retired by your Vanguard's ability, Energy Blast 3 to get plus Soul Charge 1 and choose your Vanguard for that turn. This unit that you're gonna get plus 5k power. Is this also Favernil support? I guess, because it also retires. And then finally the other double rare like soul in thing to get 2 crit base and also 10k power. But most importantly, the main generic to talk about in this set is of course the Fiendy. This is the new Direful doll, but she's generic. She has the same effect as Gungun Ram, where when you call her to rear, you soul blast soul charge 1. So when called from anywhere, hand, soul, drop, doesn't matter. And then once per turn, soul blast 3 to draw 1. So the same as Gungun Ram, but if your opponent's grade 3 or greater, she gets plus 5k for the turn. So that is different from Gungun Ram. Gungun Ram never got that power. And in soul, you can bind her from soul for her to soul charge you too as well. So if you soul charge her, you can just connect into more soul. So kind of like combines Pony and Gungun Ram. Feels decent, but also like Gungun Ram was a run in some decks sometimes, but it wasn't necessarily like a super common pick. So I'm not sure how much this one will be played, but it's definitely quite decent. I think the winner of this set is definitely Heart Uluru especially for dark states. And overall, the generics are like somewhat okay, or like the generics and like the generic commons and rares and stuff are also pretty okay. So honestly, I'm very impressed with dark states this set. I think it gets a 5 out of 5 just because Heart Uluru has been like very impressive. Like that's all I can really say about it. The only thing with Heart Uluru that I find a little bit sus is that apparently he's like a Willy Wonka Peter Pan, where he thinks that like, you know, all kids deserve toys, and he thinks that Eva is a kid despite, you know, her lore obviously being otherwise just because of the way she looks, and he hates Obscurate because he's an adult. And it's like, you know, Peter Pan hating adults and, you know, thinks that everyone is a kid at heart kind of thing is cool because he's like young boy that's like very, you know, courageous and stuff. This is Unk with a train on his head, like, you know, this like random pothead thinking that someone is a kid and assuming that someone's a kid sounds a bit sus to me. So I don't know, man. Unk, Unk can calm down and just play with his toys, man. I don't know. Anyway, moving on to Brandt Gate. This is, of course, the main thing I was excited about in this set, and I'm still very excited. I think I was testing Daikaiser with Daikaiser and wasn't super impressed, but I think that just Daikaiser on his own should be better. I actually am, like, I went from super hype to super cope, or like kind of despair, to then now I'm like in the cope slash maybe it's not even cope but actually real stage. So I'm going to get to testing more Daikaiser after the set comes out, but I do want to talk about Brandt Gate this set around too. A lot of the archetypes I like, got good support. There's some insane art in the set too if you're a Brandt Gate fan. This feels like overall we're eating really well. We got a brand new dimensional robo that never existed before, as well as like a first inclusion, and all the Bravern stuff too, which I think will definitely buff the Brandt Gate section, and I will include in the Brandt Gate section because it makes sense. It's all robots. These are Brandt Gate triggers as well, so how can I not? So I think the Brandt Gate section will be a bit long, but bear with me. All right, we have no choice but to start with talking about my boy. He's finally back, Daikaiser. I think I've made enough videos talking about him, shorts and everything of my first impressions, and now it's been a few weeks since then, a month since then. So let's talk about it, how it's been since then. I'll also probably get like a fight video done. Obviously, for channel members, there will be a POV fight of Daikaiser as fast as possible, but likely at the end of this month because I'm busy traveling to Philippines this weekend and then Fukuoka next weekend, so only the week after that I can actually record one. So it might take a bit of time, but I appreciate your understanding. And also, if you're interested in that kind of stuff, become a YouTube channel member today. Anyway, Daikaiser, let's start with the ride line. We do have a new grade 0 in Daikaiser. So it's kind of interesting. This is a brand new unit, but it does have the encounter border, where like we had Daiwing in set 6, which is also a brand new dimensional robo, but it didn't have the encounter border. So it's like, does that mean that he existed since the beginning, but we just never knew about him? It's kind of interesting. Then Kaiser Grader is the grade 1, has the same effect as Dailander, where it searches for the base order on ride, and then when you call it from the base, from soul to rear, if you have a Daikaiser Vanguard, he gives himself and your Vanguard plus 5k power. Then the grade 2 this time is a double rare, the Kaisard. He's really not that bad, it's just that his ride up is a bit questionable because of the fact that there's no persona ride on Daikaiser. So once per turn, if your opponent's grade 2 or greater, you can discard one from hand to ride from your ride deck the Daikaiser in there. And if you did for this fight, you can only ride dimensional robos. And when you do ride Daikaiser over him, he calls himself to rear, and if your Vanguard is Daikaiser, then he gets a boost for that turn, or every turn basically, which is quite good. Him being a 10k booster, effectively 15 because of how Daikaiser works, does mean that if he boosts a grade 3 like Shadow Kaiser, he will be making, you know, at minimum 28k columns, but we know that that's going to be at least 33/43. That's where Shadow Kaiser comes in handy too. So I find him pretty good. He's basically like a better version of the not Dumper, the grade 2 from set 6, basically, that gave boost to the same column. Now, the reason why the ride up is a bit questionable is because Daikaiser, first things first, does not have Persona Ride, so he does have D-Legion. They reintroduced Legion in case you did not know. Legion is back, but it is nerfed and now called D-Legion. So he legions with Daikaiser, and he does say as a condition, your opponent has to be grade 3 or greater, and this unit, so specifically the unit currently on the Vanguard circle, so if you re-ride, you can re-legion if you want to. This unit can once choose from your drop 2 triggers that are not heals and not over trigger, and then choose 2 other normal units, or any units really, that aren't triggers. So I guess it is normal units, or it can be also orders, of course, or blitz orders. So combination of up to 2 triggers that are not heal or OT and any other 2 cards, and then return them to your deck, and then search your deck for the card that this legions with and put it onto your Vanguard circle. But that unit will lose the Persona Ride icon. People seem to get this mixed up and think that, oh, you can just Persona Ride over the Daikaiser, but no, it loses the Persona Ride. It does not have Persona if you Legion. So the fact that it legions, if you don't know how Legion works, it's that you basically have 2 Vanguards on your Vanguard circle, and it combines the power of the 2 units. So Daikaiser does have, sorry, it's all the way at the bottom, so this will be a bit annoying, but Daikaiser does have 13k power, and it also allows you to use the effect. So when Daikaiser himself would attack, without even using his own on-attack effect, you can use Daikaiser's on-attack effect to count +1, draw 1, and then if your opponent's grade 3 or greater, give 5k to all of your different named dimensional robo units, including your 2 different Vanguards. And you can also use the end of battle, put a card from hand to soul to restand ability as well. But you will not be able to use the Daikaiser bind ability because he does not have the Persona Ride icon when you are in Legion. So that's already already a big strength in being able to have, you know, 2 Vanguards to combine and use both their abilities. He does carry his own effect though. When he attacks once per turn, if he's not being boosted, you can Energy Blast 3. And for that battle, he gets the effect that at the start of your drive step, so after your opponent guards, when you check for a trigger, you can choose one of your opponent's guardians that is not an over trigger and retire it. So that means you can retire any trigger that isn't a over trigger, any other unit as well. You can retire perfect guards as well, but they will not be nullified unless he uses other effect, which says when he declares his attack still, by the way, this is still the same timing. If you don't have Core Kaiser, the grade 0 in your bind zone, you can then bind the Core Kaiser from your soul in order to tell your opponent that this turn, if you retire one of their guardians, you can nullify their cannot be hit ability. This is because Sentinels say that they give your Vanguard the ability that it cannot be hit for that battle. So that means that Daikaiser will nullify that and break through the guard. That was Daikaiser's whole gimmick. That's why I fell in love with Dimension Police and robots in the first place, because of that cool effect. It was a bit more luck-based in the past. Daikaiser had an effect that you would ride over him when you'd be at 4 damage, and he'd come us 1 and get 10k and a crit to the new Vanguard. And then he would say that if during that drive check you check the grade 3, it would break any one guardian and also nullify the perfect shield. So it had this gamble effect where it's like, even if your opponent put down a perfect guard, there's a chance that it's going to get breaking through, but it also has a chance it might not. It depends on your drive check. So people build decks with lots of grade 3s because of that. Whereas this Daikaiser is a bit different. He has to be attacking without being boosted. So if you're in Legion, it's fine because you're 26k power base or 36k if you use the Aegis effect first. But when you're not in Legion, you're only 13k power. So then you really have to call out the Core Kaiser to make him 18k. But then at the same timing, you have to bind the Core Kaiser from your soul to tell your opponent, hey, I'm going to break your perfect guard. But even if you do that, your opponent can guard with a OT basically. So they can do drop an OT and then be like OT to pass, and you can't break that. And they can also drop 2 perfect guards. And then even if you retire 1, because you can only retire 1 guardian, the strong part about Daikaiser in the past was that for every grade 3 you drive check, you could break 1. So sometimes your opponent would drop like 2 or 3 perfect guards just because they were afraid of you breaking through both. So the fact that that's like a hard once per game now is a little bit unfortunate. So the timing at which you use this effect will be very important, and it really will depend on the game state too. So does that make Daikaiser bad? I don't really think so. I was focusing on using Daikaiser as like a finisher in Dayusha, which is honestly really not that good, because you want to persona ride with Dayusha once to use the Goyusha to get the drive. So then you'd only ride Daikaiser on like turn 4 going second, turn 5 going first. And by that time, your opponent has had enough time to like pull into 2 PGs that you can use against Daikaiser's effect. So I did feel from that moment that using Daikaiser on his own is better, because that means that you can basically ride up with Kaizard. You can play a more aggressive game plan and just fill your deck with grade 2s essentially. And then that way, when you ride up into Daikaiser, you can swing with 18k because you can call out the Kaiser Greater, and then immediately use the Energy Blast 3 effect to tell your opponent, hey, I'm going to kill one of your guardians, so that even if they drop like a 20k shield, that's going to get broken through. So they're usually going to be taking it, which means that they're going to go to 4 damage a bit earlier. And that means next turn you'll be able to Legion and then be able to have like the Vanguard restand. The on-attack effect is only once per turn, but you're actually applying a lot of pressure, and you could technically use like Glory Maker on the second Vanguard attack too. So I really think that focusing the deck around Daikaiser is really not that bad either. So I really do want to mess around with pure Daikaiser a bit more too. And that's not all. We also have Shadow Kaiser. This is the one that used to fetch great Daikaiser back in the day. And his effects are really good. I feel like this is the card that I feel is really good, but a lot of people around me don't, which is kind of strange. So he has the effect that in drop, if your Vanguard is Daikaiser and you didn't ride this turn, you can Soul Boss 1 and bind him to search your deck for Daikaiser grade 3 or greater and ride it as stand and shuffle your deck. So that means that, for example, you can on one turn Legion with this, and then let's say next turn you guard with like 2 fronts and 2 freezing waves or something, or not, you can't guard with 2 freezing waves, but let's say you have another freezing wave left and like a PG and drop. That means you can use Shadow Kaiser next turn to ride a new Daikaiser and then Legion again and put those 4 cards back. I think being able to put back PGs and Freezing Wave for Legion is also very nice, so that will make this deck very tanky too. And then his other effects are that if your Vanguard is a Daikaiser grade 3 or greater, he gets plus 5k, but if you have 3 or more bases in Order Zone, he gets plus 10k instead. And this is on both players' turns, so he's actually very hard to clear out unless your opponent has straight up removal. And even if they retire him, he has a drop effect, so they really have to bind him like Virgila. So for that reason, I think it's quite good, because Dayusha makes him 28, and if he's boosted by Kaizard, he's basically 43 base, which is like pretty damn good, no? That's like not even counting Persona. which this deck can't do, by the way. So Persona is never an actual factor here. And then his final effect is on rear and in hand. If your Dimensional Robo Vanguard is attacked at the start of the guard step, you can put this to drop from hand in order to choose the attack unit and give it plus 10k shield, or power rather. But the strong part about this is that this works on turn 1 or 2. So normally, this, grade 3 doesn't have any shield value, but even on turn 2, you can dish this as a 10k shield. So for that reason, I really feel like even though it's just a grade 3 in hand until you get to grade 3, it is a 10k shield at the same time with a drop effect, right? And then you can put it back to your deck if you want through Legion, if you don't want to bind it, to call it out later down the line. Although the only way to like call it from soul, or like you can soul charge it off the die base, so you really just have to draw into it. But given that you're deck thing a lot with die base, I feel like it's not that unrealistic. So I do think Daikaiser is pretty good, but honestly, the best dimensional robo I think of the entire set is the Reckon. This new grade 2 is really good. It's a grade 2 that says it's also brand new D robo, so that's why it doesn't have the encounter border. If you rank as a dimensional robo, you look at top 5 cards of your deck when you call him from anywhere in order to add a grade 3 or greater dimensional robo from the top 5 into your hand, or a set order to your hand and shuffle your deck. If you added something to hand, you either discard one or you put something from hand to soul. So this means that you can soul in stuff that you want to call out from your die base, even if you drew into it. This does happen sometimes where you just like draw into your die Mariner that you want to use against the Virgila, or you draw into your die battles that you want to use for the 2 crit gain. I really like that Daikaiser is synergistic with all the old D-Robo stuff and that they kept the die base in general, so I do think that is very nice. And the best part is that this guy says if your Vanguard's a Dimensional Robo grade 3 or greater and you have a base in your order zone, it becomes a 15k power attacker and a 10k shield. This deck has so many 10k shields now, and I think that that's what makes it really good. And you can play a pretty aggressive grade 2 turn as well, just because you can, play down Dilated to search out a base. You can call that from soul as well, and then you can also at the same time call out this guy. He can put something to soul that you call out from the die base next turn. So overall, it just feels like the resource loop in this deck has gotten only better thanks to this guy. He only adds grade 3s or orders, but it's still not too bad given that you are running still quite a few, especially if you're running like both Diebird as well as Daikaiser. So I do think it's definitely worth to like, this is going to be a 4 of I think in both Daikaiser and Dayusha and like the hybrid versions too. And then the last card, the D-Robo's got a lot of support. This set is one of the main features. Sorry, there's one more that's sadly not going to be played, but has the best art, I think, is Nonoka. So Nonoka is reaggress circle once per turn if your Vanguard's a D-Robo, grade 3 or greater, soul boss 1 and rest herself. So she's good behind the Vanguard in Daikaiser. To choose a card from drop with a different name from her that is a Dimensional Robo normal unit, put it to the bottom of your deck. And if you did, you can choose Dimensional Robo unit and give it 5k for the turn. So this basically is telling you, hey, you should put back your Daikaisers back to deck so that you can use Shadowkaiser to ride Daikaiser again to Legion again. So this deck not needing to Persona ride ever means that you're not like having to draw into specific grade 3s and like have that control the tempo of your game. Instead, you can really focus on when you want to use Daikaiser's like Core Kaiser effect. This card, I'm not sure if it's going to really be played. I initially did consider it, but at this point, I'm kind of like doubting it if you really have the space for it. It being searchable because it has Dimensional Robo name is pretty good though. So as a one of you could potentially try to make space. And then this is the Die Spray drawn by Kairu Deluxe. This card is just so good, dude. If I ever meet Kairu Deluxe, this is the one card I wanted to sign. He says when he's called from soul to rear by an effect, if your Vanguard is D-Robo, he gets to energy charge 1. So you do have to pay 2 energy to do that. So I don't know, 1 energy to call out a vanilla doesn't really sound that appealing to me. So that's all the Dimensional Robo stuff. It's a lot, but it's honestly, I've definitely been ping-ponging on my like sort of impression on it. But honestly, at the end of the day, I'm still quite happy with it. And it just gives me motivation to cook. I mean, just look at Daikaiser, dude. This is like the most beautiful, I think, as like the world's biggest Daikaiser fan, I do think this is the best art. It just looks so modernized, and I love how we have like this nice full body shot of him as well. I need to update my ending screen animation as well, because I feel like I've been using the G era reprint of Daikaiser this whole time, because that was my favorite art until now. But this one especially beats the V series one. This one's just so cool. I also like how it almost looks like Dimensional Police logo, and the secret is like going into his hand. Like, just, what a cool dude. The secret rare also, and like the secret rare looks good, but also like the freaking silver rare as well. Like, oh, just so nice. I really want to get one of each of the rarities for Daikaiser. I feel like he looks good in everything. So that's what happens when you're that handsome, I guess. It's crazy. Anyway, I've spent enough time talking about D-Robos. We still have Bravern and all the other stuff in this set too. So there is a piece of support for Silhouette. So this guy is a Combine Rusher. So start of battle phase, your Vanguard is Silhouette. This is in drop, Energy Blast 3. Call this from drop and then get 5k for the turn as a grade 1. And then regear once per turn. When your other unit attacks in the same column as this unit, then if this turn your card has been equipped to your Vanguard by your Vanguard's ability this turn, for that battle, you can give the attacking unit plus 10k. And if you did, you retire this unit. at the end of your turn. So it's a once per turn, but it does mean that you can use this on your rear columns. You can use it on your Vanguard column as well to basically give plus 10k to the thing that attacks, which I think is quite cool. And then this coming back every turn after you use that effect also seems pretty nice. Silhouette is a deck as I always want to mess around with. I still haven't sleeved it up even once, but I always like its concept. I do like its look. It is the main character of the Youthquake manga too, so I always want to give it a try. Wow, there's like really like so many double rares. There's 3 double rares for D-Robos. It's kind of crazy. There's a generic like on attack, put the same thing to soul. This gets 10k. If you have 3 or more orders and you put the same thing as this into your soul, this becomes crit 2. Again, in like big scaling decks where the crit 2 pressure on rear is good, I think, and like especially if you can find this realistically, like draw a lot in the deck, like thing is, it doesn't work in Messiah, a deck that draws a lot, because it needs you to persona ride. Like every time I'm like, oh, the perfect deck for this is a stride deck, and I'm like, oh wait, it doesn't work in stride decks. It's interesting, but I do think it'll see some play in some decks maybe. Then in terms of other generics, this is the, if you're playing, check the trigger card. This is another D-Robo. Sorry, there was one more. This cutie, Sayaka. When you guard with her Vanguard as a D-Robo, you can choose a different name from her D-Robo from your soul and guard with it. This is pretty cool in premium. Lets you guard with your grade 3s in soul and that are like super buffed by your die liner as well as your strides as well. So pretty funny card. Then I think this one was technically, I mean, this was kind of generic. It's a funny little penguin. Once per turn, when you play a set order in your order zone from hand, you look at top 3 cards of your deck and you can choose a card that is already in your order zone and then add it to your hand and shuffle your deck. So this sounds like bat support a little bit. Doesn't have kaiju in the name though, so it's not that good, but it's also, I guess, pretty good in like other decks that play a lot of the same set order like Gravidia, just because the hit rate for this will be pretty good. That's also all it does, so I'm also not sure because it'd be pretty weak attacker in a deck without scaling. Then you have this thing, when he finishes attacking a grade 3 or greater, you bind him to Soul Charge 1. If there's ever a Brandt Gate deck that cares about binding your own stuff, then this will be pretty decent. There's another grade 3 that gets boost in 2k. We've seen these before. Microtic Laboratory. Soul Boss 1 to play this as a normal order in Brandt Gate. Look at top 5, find a grade 1 unit card, call it to rear and shuffle your deck. Ooh, it's like a Imigrar searcher for Soul Blast 1. If only you didn't use up your order play per turn on setting an order every turn. Not too bad. This actually, in order in Brandt Gate decks that don't set orders every turn, this is really not bad, especially if you have a key grade 1. Like maybe this would be kind of cool in Messiah. Find you your sacrifice. It's not too bad. Then the Blitz order, play Energy Blast 2, move this to Guardian Circle at 5k shield card. One of the unit attacks Soul Boss 1, this unit gets plus 5k for the turn. If you have a lot of soul, this could actually get pretty beefy. And I think that's basically it for the Brandt Gate stuff, except for the generic, which unfortunately is, I think, the worst one of all the nations. She's so cute. It's kind of fortunate. I was really hoping she'd be a grade 1 Bobo Mine, but that's not the case. She's instead a grade 1 Combine Rusher. So in drop, when you play a set order from hand, you can almost call her from drop to rear. And then if you have a set order in your order zone, she gets intercept and can intercept from back row. And rear circle when she boosts if your Vanguard is grade 3 or greater. If you have 2 or more set orders in your order zone, for that battle she gets plus 5k. Grade 1 Combine Rusher is not bad, but realistically the only deck that probably maybe plays this is Eva. And even then, CB isn't that free in Eva either. Like you are still CBing a couple times a turn, and it's like you're using it on Combine Rusher, and your back row is like, I guess when you don't have a lot of Migrars, you sometimes have some space. But the problem is that there's like barely any other Brandt Gate decks that would play this. Maybe like Vanguard, but there's so many Brandt Gate decks nowadays that just like make tokens or like are very archetype specific, like D-Robos. But hey, sometimes it takes a card in the future to make this good. Maybe there'll be a card like a very grade 1 based Brandt Gate deck in the future where we're gonna be like, oh my god, this 200 yen card is now 3,000 yen. How could it be? So again, I always say this, if you're a nation main and you really like this one nation, if there's a generic card, if it's cheap, just pick it up. I think it's like the same thing with Regulus pieces. Regulus pieces are just like, if you plan to play the game competitively, especially when Regulus pieces release, they're usually quite cheap, except for like ladder, I guess, on release. So just pick them up because you never know when you'll need it. Worst case, you can sell it later, but it's like if you play the game competitively and actively, it's not bad to have one of each. The same goes for these generics. Like if you have the spare cash, I really do recommend it for your main nations, not for everything. All right, so that's like all the regular Brandt Gate stuff. Now let's talk about Bravern. Freipan. Bravern got a lot of really cool stuff, not talking just about like the alt arts, like a SP starter is really cool and like all these other stuff, but they actually printed Brandt Gate triggers. So Brandt Gate heal, Brandt Gate draw, Brandt Gate front, Brandt Gate crit, 2 Brandt Gate starters even. We have the Isami as well as the Ruru. Brandt Gate PG as well. 絶対に大丈夫だ。なぜなら私がブレイワンだからだ. What a freaking like crazy name for a perfect R2. It's peak. Anyway, let's talk about, there's 2 decks basically. The main one is Bravern. So for the Bravern deck, the ride line is the Isami Owl. So he's a normal ride line grade 0, but he also says in Soul, if your Vanguard is a Bravern, then this card cannot be moved from Soul by effects. So he's stuck in Soul forever because he's the pilot. And then the grade 1, Isami Owl says, when you ride over him with the grade 2 Bravern, you reveal the grade 3 Bravern from your ride deck in order to put the Brave Knight's token in your order zone. What does that token do, you ask? So this is the Brave Knight's token set order. It's a grade 2. So it says, in order zone, if your Vanguard's a Bravern, then all of your TS named units get plus 5k shield. In order zone once per turn, if your opponent's Vanguard's grade 2 or greater, Energy Blast 3. From your drop, choose a TS card and call it to rear. It's a very strong effect. Energy Blast 3 to revive a TS is good, and you'll see what a TS is in a second. So the ride line gives you that set order, which is already very, very good. The grade 2 Bravern says when you ride over him with the grade 3 one, you search your drop or deck for the Dragon and call it behind the Vanguard, and then shuffle your deck. And the grade 3 Bravern is this one that says he has D Legion with either Spirbia, this Spirbia, the grade 2 one, or with Daikaiser. So it's the same condition as the original Daikaiser for your Legion. And once per turn, when he attacks at the end of that battle, if he's in D Legion state, and if you have Isami Owl in your soul, count almost 1, discard 1, stand this unit, and for that turn, he gets plus 10k power, minus 1 drive. So that means that you can use Daikaiser's effect on either of these attacks as long as this is not boosted. So that means you're able to Energy Blast 3 on top of that to retire something, and also have, like, if you have Cardfight, I guess in Soul, use that effect too, but you probably won't because you're not playing the die base. So usually you're going to Legion with a Spirbia. Spirbia says when it attacks, if your order zone has Brave Knights in it, or if it has the other order that the Spirbia deck makes, you can almost draw 1, and if your opponent's Vanguard's grade 3 or greater, for that turn, your front row gets plus 5k. So this is obviously the better one in my opinion than Daikaiser for this deck, because you get to draw 1, which Daikaiser doesn't give you, and you get power to the front row, which Daikaiser doesn't give you. And then start of your ride phase, if he's in D Legion, you Energy Blast 3, search your deck or drop for Ban Bre Big Bang and ride the stand, and then if you search your deck, you shuffle your deck. So that basically means that if you go first, you can't Legion, but if you go second on turn 3, you can Legion up into this, and then turn 4, start of the next ride phase, you Energy Blast 3, and you ride into Ban Bre Big Bang, which is the grade 4. The grade 4 is it's Yuki Bakhatsu no Sonosaki e Ban Brave Big Bang. So he can only be ridden by the effect of the Spirbia, and when he's ridden, he's a grade 4 with triple drive that says on place to Vanguard Circle. For that turn, he gets the following effects. At the end of the turn, you choose this Bravern from your soul and ride it as rest. So basically every turn, I guess it's not every turn because you won't be in Legion when you ride over this, but you basically give your front row plus 10k, and then at the end of the battle he attacked, if you have, Isami Owl in your soul, you can almost stand him and he loses 2 drives, so it goes 3 drives into 1. And then he also says that when he stands by a unit's ability once per turn, discard a card from hand and you can get plus 10k for the turn. So he's giving plus 10k to your front row, he's restanding and keeping a drive after driving 3, and then he also on the restand can get 10k himself on top of that again, but when he rides back, you will no longer be in Legion, right? So when you ride over a Legion, you just have 1 Vanguard again. So that means that next turn you'll have to Legion again, do this restand again, and then the next turn after that, you can ride into this, and you can only ride into this by that effect. So that's just something to keep in mind. But it's really strong, like, going second, you already have a very good turn 3 into turn 4, and usually the game's probably going to end around there. But you can't stay in this form for too long, right? And then what does the deck do when you are not going second? Well, you do remember that the ride line searches out this guy who is called Ban Dragon. So Ban Dragon says, if you have the Bravern Vanguard, the normal grade 3, you can put this to soul, search your deck, hand, or drop or damage for a Bakatsuru Yuki Ban Bre Ban. Ride it as stand, and then if you search your deck, shuffle your deck, search your damage zone, you put the top card of your deck into your damage zone. So as long as you don't damage this, you're fine basically. So he combines into the Bakatsuru Yuki Ban Bre Ban. So you can use this going first on turn 3, and he says that when he's ridden by Bandragon, he gets for that turn plus 5k and drive plus 1, so you're triple driving no matter what. And then at the end of that turn, you can ride the original grade 3 Bravern from your soul as rest and choose from soul or drop the Burn Dragon and call it back to behind the Vanguard. So the Burn Dragon will always go back there as long as it's not cleared out. So when you ride over the grade 2, he makes it, so then going first you can use it immediately. The only problem is that if this gets cleared off the next turn, then you won't have access to this anymore. So you only just really go into this on like your first grade 3 turn going first. Otherwise, you probably want a Legion, I think. So it's like, okay, sounds pretty good. But, you know, you got to discard for this freaking cost. Like, is there any good synergy? There is. There's this Ruru, the future hero Ruru. She says, when this card is discarded during your turn, can almost one search your deck for Allied Task Force and add it to your hand. The rest of the effect we'll talk about a bit later. But what is Allied Task Force, you ask? Well, luckily, it's right next to it. It's a grade 3 order that says if you have a Vanguard that is the race of Yuki Bagahatsu Ban Bravern, then you can play this. To search your deck or drop for a TS or a Brave Knights unit, up to 2, call them to rear, and if you search your deck, shuffle your deck. So it's any combination. It can be 2 TS or 2 Brave Knights or 1 of each. So this order doesn't cost anything and it calls 2 things. Isn't that crazy? So then what do these do? Well, we have this. The first Brave Knight is the Lewis Smith. So he says if you already have him on board, you can't call him. I think they all have that effect, that if you have them on board, you can't call them. And then in drop, when your TS Rising Orthros is placed, you can Soul Blast 1 and call him in the same column as him from drop. And then back or rear circle, when your grade 3 or greater Vanguard attacks, if you have Isami Ao or Ruru in your soul, for that turn, he'll get plus 5k power. So he's like a 13k booster that still survives. This is how you can see him. So it's like, okay, pretty decent. But then each of these pilots have a robot aligned to them. So Rising Orthos is the one for him. This grade 2 basically says, when you guard with it, you may also move the pilot to the Guardian Circle at the same time. And don't forget that the token also gives them plus 5k shield. And once per turn, when he's boosted by a Brave Knight while attacking a grade 3 or greater, for that turn you get plus 5k. So now they both get plus 5k, so it's a 28k column. And if he's being boosted by Lewis Smith, then if your Vanguard is the grade 4 Ban Brave Big Ban, at the end of that battle, he allows you to retire all of the rearguards in the same column as this unit to choose from your deck or drop Sekai wo Suku Yuki Brave Ban, call it to rear, and for that turn give it plus 10k, and if you search your deck, you shuffle your deck. So the Sekai wo Suku Yuki Brave Ban is this one, so you can call this to rear. So essentially, end of the battle that this attacked, you can retire this column to call that grade 3, give it plus 10k. So you're able to do 4 attacks, and you know, that's like 5 attacks together with the Vanguard restand. So it's also pretty good, considering you also have a bunch of front row scaling from this thing. So basically, you go into this grade 4 as fast as possible and then just explode on your opponent with like 5 attacks and like big power. Bum 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 bum. So that's like the best of the pilots. Every other one of them basically have the same effect if I remember correctly. So the pilots we have are Akira Mishima, then there is Hiro Aori, Sheri Roren, as well as Hibiki Ryo. So they basically all have the effect that if you can only call this if you don't have it on the board already, and in drop when you would call their respective robot, you can Soul Blast 1 to call the pilot in the same column. So whenever the robot will be called, the pilot comes out behind it for Soul Blast 1. So then in terms of robots, we have there the TS, we have Dingo. They all share the effect that when they would go to Guardian Circle, they can take their pilot with them. And when they're boosted by Brave Knights, attacking grade 3 or greater, they all get plus 5k. And he says, so all of their unique effects are, his is, if he's boosted by Sheri Lauren, then until the end of your opponent's next turn, this cannot be chosen by opponent's effects. Oh, sorry, cannot be retired by opponent's effects and gets plus 5k shield. This one says, for that turn he gets plus 5k, and if he's boosted by Hiro Aori, he can soul charge 1, so nothing too fantastic. This one says, if he's boosted by Akira Mishima, then for that, at the end of that battle, this will stand all rearguards in the same column as this, and then for that turn, give the effect that this cannot attack the opponent's Vanguard, but it can attack your opponent's back row. So you can get a 6th attack, but it can only attack your opponent's rears, but it can snipe the back row, which can be pretty annoying, especially for like Estation. So it's actually like a pretty interesting meta read. So I think, and the last one is this one, which is a prevent opponent from intercepting and also battle door your opponent. So the really good ones, I would say, are essentially this one as well as this one, and like maybe this one that you would play. But I think you only really have space for 2. So I think those are going to be the ones that are mostly played, which I'm not complaining. I like Mishima, so that's nice. So that's the Bravern deck. It's like, you know, 5 to 6 attacks in terms of its like highest like potential. You discard for a cost, you get to search out your strongest order. Your order pluses, and it's like going second, you have good plays of Legion into the grade 4. Going first, it's a bit more complicated. You basically have to like going first, ride into this one and do triple drive, and then next turn you Legion, and then the turn after that you can use this effect to go into the Bun Brave Big Bun. So it almost feels like this like wants to go second, which is also kind of interesting, just to like hit this as fast as possible. But there is one more deck, which is the Sperbia itself. So it is based around the Dudu. So Dudu as a grade 0. Then the grade 1 is this Sperbia that lets you reveal Sperbia grade 3 from your ride deck and then choose Rudu from your soul, add it to your hand and soul charge 1. And it's going to be boosted, so you battle solo. And then when this grade 2 rides from the grade 1, you choose from rear or hand the Dudu starter, put it to your soul, search your deck for the future hero Dudu, the grade 1, and add it to your hand and shuffle your deck. And if you did, you put the other token into your order zone. So this token says, in order zone, energy blast 3 once per turn to choose a future hero Dudu from your drop and call it to rear. And then order zone, start of battle phase, when your Vanguard is Sperbia grade 3 or greater, soul blast 1. Your opponent chooses one of their front row rear guards. Oh, so you choose one of your opponent's front row rear guards. That cannot intercept, and if you have a Sperbia, or sorry, when your Sperbia Vanguard would attack, you can attack that unit at the same time as well. So it's kind of like a Vermilion style effect. So it prevents intercept, it lets you revive the Dudu, so it's also like pretty good at trading. I do feel like the Brave Knights one is a bit better because Energy Blast 3 to revive a robot every time, and then every time you revive a robot, it calls out the pilot by Soul Blast 1. Seems pretty good, and all of your TSs also getting 5k extra shield just makes them pretty nice too. So I do feel like the robots are just really, really good value. But anyway, the grade 3 Sperbia, we still have to talk about that. This one says your opponent's Vanguard's grade 3 or greater. If you have future hero Dudu in your soul, this gets plus 5k power in both players' turns. When it attacks, you can do the following. Choose a Dudu, rear guard, put it to your soul. And for that turn, this gets plus 5k power and plus 1 drive. So it's a triple driving, basically 23k power. And it does have persona, so you can persona over it. And then you can also counterblast 1 when it attacks in order to choose a column and stand all Bravern rear guards in, or Bravern race rear guards in that column. So it lets you get the 4th attack, which isn't too bad. And then the other effect of Dudu that I didn't describe yet is related to this deck, which says if your Vanguard is a Sperbia, act once per turn. You can rest this to choose a rear guard, give it 5k for the turn. And if you chose a rear guard in the same column as this unit that is Sperbia, you can stand this unit. And if one is Vanguard's grade 3 or greater for that turn, you can choose 2 of your opponent's rear guards to not intercept instead of 1. So you get to freeze 2 from intercepting and also attack into 3 things. So it's really Vermilion. So I think from the 2 of them, Bravern definitely is better. Bravern just has way more things to do. You do play Allied Task Force in both of them, I think, though. But Dudu and Sperbia have one more trick up their sleeves, which is the Vita. Verum Vita. So you can only play one of this in your deck. It's a grade 4 with triple drive. And it says in your drop, when you would damage check something that is not a heal or an over trigger in your damage, and your Vanguard is a Destrives grade 3, which is what this is, Destrives Sperbia, and your damage is 5, so when you would damage check it when you're ready at 5, so same timing as like 6 damage heal or 6 damage OT, you ride this as a cost from drop, and for that fight, your damage zone to lose becomes 7. So it's literally like another like OT in your deck, essentially. So you ride this from your drop, and then it says when you attack with it, if your damage is 6 or more, counterblast 1, and you retire all of yours and your opponent's rear guards. So essentially, you board wipe yourself, but also board wipes your opponent. Doesn't really do too much. It's just like a triple driving grade 4 that board wipes every turn and turns you into 7 damage, so like turns you into Greedon for a little bit. So I do think with that included, the Bravern deck is definitely better. With that, we do conclude talking about all of the Brandt Gate stuff. And honestly, Bravern stuff seems really good to me. I haven't tested it myself yet, unfortunately, been a bit too busy. And I'm honestly quite hopeful for Daikaiser even now. The cope, it's in full power. That's just how it is, man. I wouldn't be a DP main if I didn't believe in infinite potential. The one thing I do want to hope for is that this generic also has more decks that can be used in the future. So I think for now she's pretty unfortunate, but later down the line she'll definitely get better. So all things considered, I do think she knocks down points quite a bit right now. So I will give Brandt Gate a 4 out of 5. I do wish that Daikaiser was a tiny bit better, but it's still, we got a lot of really good stuff for D-Robos this set. I do wish that Silhouette got maybe even more support, not just one card. I feel like would have been nice. But otherwise, I'm definitely very happy with what we got for this nation. So I think this is by far the longest segment, but for good reason. Let's move on to Keter. Keter has the most triple rares of any nation in this set, and honestly, maybe the most triple rares for a nation in any set. I think 5 triples for Keter. What happened back when we, start of D, we only had 2 triples per nation. Now we have 5 for 1. Like, what's going on? Dragon Emperor only had 3. There's a lot of archetype support in this set. There's Minerva, there's Azel, there's also Sirius. There's, I think, also support for a couple older decks outside of that. Yeah, there's Undercover. Basically, there's a lot. There's really a lot going on in this set. So let's break it down. I guess let's go in the, order opposite of when they were revealed. So the last one to reveal was Minerva, so let's go with that. Minerva is a grade 4. This was a Stride in G era. That's now a main deckable grade 4 in Standard. You cannot ride it outside of by effects, and if your opponent is grade 3 or greater, it gets all of its effects. So until then, it's a vanilla. The most important effect is in Soul. You can choose the original grade 3 Minerva on your Vanguard circle and bind it, and then choose a card from hand and put it to your Soul. You ride this card from your Soul, and then if you put a card that is a Genesis clan from your hand as cost to the Soul for this, then if you didn't ride during the ride phase this turn, for that turn, this gets the effect that all of your front row units get plus 5k power. And at the end of the turn, you will retire this unit and ride the card that you bound for this effect as rest. So essentially, this means that if you go first, you have to stay on normal Minerva for a turn, but if you go second, you can ride into this immediately. What does that do? Well, first things first, you already got plus 5k to the front row. Then she says she gives another 10k to all your front row as well. Don't forget this deck can do multiple attacks with calling out stuff from Soul. So everything called out gets the plus 15 basically. And then once per turn, when she attacks, you can almost one Soul Blast 3 in order to, at the end of that battle, restand her, and she loses 2 drives. But she's a grade 4, which means she has triple drive. So overall, this feels like just an upgrade to the original Minerva. It does feel good, but at the same time, I feel like this deck already had a bit of an over piece reliance issue, where especially they made Cocoa, which also has to put a card from hand to Soul to look at top 2, add 1 to hand, 1 on top or to Soul. And then this also needs to put a card from hand to Soul as well. So I feel like there's so much cost that makes you put stuff to Soul, and this deck doesn't really have an easy way to rebuild a board from scratch in a format with a lot of removal, right? Buff Saga doubles up your board. Ooh, and then it's Virgil binds your pieces. Ooh, what are we doing about that? So I feel like the firepower of this deck is very good, especially going second, but it does feel like you're gonna have to play your first grade 3 turn going first a little bit carefully to make sure you don't lose everything in those kind of matchups. So there is one more card though that you did get as support, which is the Bibine. This card says that it is treated as a Genesis, and as long as your Vanguard is a clan with Genesis, and if your Vanguard is Minerva, you can pay her cost with Energy Blast 3. So when she's called from hand, if your Vanguard is a Genesis clan, Candlemas 1, draw 1, and choose a card from drop and put it to Soul. Not too bad, especially when it's for Energy Blast 3, it's even better. Drawing 1 and putting a card back from drop to Soul is one of the ways to patch up one of those weaknesses of how do you come back when your stuff is removed? Well, you could put it back to Soul and call it out from Soul when you Soul Blast for Minerva's cost, right? So that is one of the ways to patch it up. And it also says that when your Minerva would attack, with this turn, your Vanguard has not stood yet by an effect. You can almost 1 and stand this, and then this gets plus 5k for the turn. So this means that you have to use this on the first Minerva's attack declaration. So that means that you have 1 less in grade 2 to Soul Blast to call now than you did before, because you can just restand this girl. It does, CB, so that CB does add up. Good thing there is a counter charger in this set, but you CB1 for this, you CB1 for this, you CB1 for the grade 2 that calls stuff from Soul, so things do add up. But this card is overall pretty good in a vacuum. But again, one of the other issues is all this deck also CBs a lot. So is it really going to be that insane? Well, luckily, the Dissection Angel is in this set. She gets plus 2k if your opponent's Vanguard's grade 3 or greater during both players' turns. So 10k booster is pretty good because you can put this behind, strong grade 3 rear guards like Angelica or Gabuelius and stuff. And if she boosts, you Soul Blast 1 to retire her to draw 1, which is literally Painkiller Angel's effect. But she has another effect. Once per turn, when your drive check reveals a trigger unit, Soul Blast 2, so you're Soul Blasting a lot here, to countercharge 1, and she gets plus 5k for the turn. This is pretty interesting because if you boost your Vanguard with this, and let's say you're attacking with 23k, and then your opponent drops a 25k shield, and that makes them, 38k, which normally would mean 2 triggers to pass. But if you check a trigger, and you proc her effect to Soul Blast 2, countercharge 1 and get 5k, and you put the trigger to the Vanguard, you've now gained plus 15k to that column, making you 38. So the 2 to pass becomes a 1 to pass. So I can imagine some people will use that and go Oh, 2 to pass? You sure about that? Well, here I go. Oh, it's actually a 1 to pass kind of thing. So just be careful. Let's all have good manners and tell our opponent exactly how much power it is to pass in cases like this, you know? Good sportsmanship goes a long way, and it does create very nice environments for new players to come into locals, so I definitely do recommend that. So this card overall I think is a very good generic for Keter. I don't think every deck will be able to use both effects, so you're going to be kind of like seeing where your soul's gonna go, because soul blasting 3 in 1 turn is pretty tough. The trigger requirement for the countercharge is also going to be a bit tough for some decks. I do think anything from the encounters that runs Cocoa has it pretty easy. Rezel has it pretty easy because it can stack its triggers too. Obviously, you know, Minerva's an encounter, so that's also going to be pretty easy for her too. Hexorb as well is another candidate for that as well. So overall, I do think this card will be played, so if you're Keter main, definitely pick it up. So that is basically the Genesis stuff for the most part, I want to say. I'm just going to quickly sift through to make sure I'm not forgetting anything, but I don't think so. So next we had Azel. Azel was, I think I was traveling to Indonesia, or I had to sleep early because of Indonesia or something like that. But this card got revealed when I was like really busy. So he says, if you have Blonde Azel in your soul, he gets its original continuous and auto effects and plus 2k during both players' turns. So you're 15k base. You might be wondering, what are those effects that you are inheriting? Well, those effects are that you cannot ride anything but Azel, so that also is inherited. And start of your ride phase, if you have 3 or less units, you soul blast 1 to look at top 3, choose a grade 3 or lower unit card, call it an empty rearguard circle, put the rest to bottom deck. And then when this attacks, if you're your opponent's Vanguard, you can almost 1, look at top 7, choose a grade 3 or lower, 2 grade 3 or lower unit cards, call them to empty rearguard circles. For that turn, they get plus 10, this unit gets plus 10k, sorry, and you shuffle your deck. So basically, you keep the Soul Blast 1 to call something, you keep the CB1 to call 2 from top 7 and get 10k. So what else does it add, right? Don't forget that by riding Platina Azel, that doesn't count as Persona Ride. So you lose Persona Ride on your turn 3 that you had until now, which was one of the strengths for Azel. Instead, he says once per turn, you can count almost 1, or choose an Azel grade 3 or greater from your rearguard circle and put it to soul. So that's how you can inherit that effect if you want to, if you didn't ride the original Azel, but that wouldn't happen because Bowmains rides into the original Azel. So you're riding this from hand basically. So CB1 or put an Azel to soul in order to choose a Roar King of Knights, or what, not King of Knights, what was it again? Rampage of the Beast King? What's the name? The Reign Supreme King of Beasts. There you go. This is also a top 7 to call something and give it 5k order. So you can choose that from your drop, which don't forget the ride line finds for you. So you can play it first on one turn, the next turn ride this and add that back to your hand. And then you add that back to hand. For that turn, it gets plus 5k. And if your opponent's Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, it gets the following effects. And usually they always will be. So during your turn, this unit gets the effect that all of your front row rear guards get plus 5k power. And if your damage zone is 4 or more, this also gets a crit. So you exchange Persona Ride for a plus 5k to front row on that turn. But the next turn you can have plus 15, I guess. And this also gets a crit if you're at limit break 4. So I do agree with a lot of people that this doesn't feel like the big upgrade that it should feel like. Especially because you lose Persona Ride. I feel like that is really the big part of it. You still get to call 2 things on attack. You still get to replenish your board at the start of main phase. And then I guess like from the top 3, if you call an Azel, you can put it to soul and then get the order back and then play the order top 7, call something, and then that gets 5k, this gets 5k, and then your front row gets 5k, and then you 4 damage, you get a crit. It's like, this also being a 15k base is pretty valid, but I don't know. It does leave a little bit to be desired, especially if like Platina in V series was so insanely good that it definitely like raised expectations, because Platina originally was pretty whatever, but this one, I don't know, does leave a little bit to be desired. But luckily that's not the only Azel support, because this double rare is the real MVP. This thing says if your Vanguard's an Azel grade 3 or greater, it gets the following effects. When placed on rear, counterblast 1, either draw 1 or you choose the blonde Azel in your Vanguard circle, and for that turn, its drive becomes 2. Don't forget that when you superior ride blonde Azel, its drive is 1. So this lets you make it into 2 for a CB, which is really, really good. So either you draw 1 or you draw 1 by drive checking, which is the better form of draw in this game. And then when this attacks a grade 3, for that battle, like, you can give 5k to him. And if he did end the battle, he will bot deck himself. And then you can also energy blast 3 to draw 1. So this frees up the circle too. This frees up the circle for you to call something for Azel's top 7 afterwards. This also gets 5k on its own. This also allows you to undo Azel's demerit from the past. So this on its own feels insane, to the point that people are like, do you even need to play this form of Azel? Like, you might as well just kind of like ride up, use this guy, twin drive, and then next turn just persona ride and win, right? But this guy is really the MVP, like such a good double rare, really feels like the MVP for Azel. I do think that Platina will be played, but it does just feel like you power down for a turn when your whole thing of the deck is that you're very fast. So I don't know, it's an interesting thing. This new grade 1 is also kind of cool. So basically it says during your battle phase, when he's in the back row rearguard circle, your unit is put in the same column as this unit. If your Vanguard is only one clan, you can energy blast 2 to stand this. So basically, if you would, let's say, use this guy to put himself back to deck, then Azel top 7 calls something in front of him, energy blast 2, he will restand. And then in a turn, if your Vanguard is an Azel grade 3 or greater, if any of your units were played from deck this turn, which is like a non-condition, he can go to Soul. And that's also very good because Azel, Soul Boss 1 every turn, is also basically refunded for. So this also feels like a really good support for Azel too. So it's like the Azel grade 3 itself is like the weakest part, which is kind of interesting. So that is basically all for the Azels. There is this Eagle. Invalid boosted if your Vanguard is just one clan, you can put this as Soul. And if this card would be Soul Blasted, if your Vanguard is just one clan, you can Soul Charge 1. So this is more for Genesis, I guess, but technically can, you know, you also Soul Blast in Azel as well. So it's kind of technically works in Azel too. So yeah, basically I think Minerva's like, it's kind of interesting where like they both got interesting patches, but it does feel like Azel got treated by its rearguards way better. Whereas for Genesis, it's like really the Minerva Vanguard that makes a big change. But we still have one more triple rare and a whole deck to talk about, which is Sirius, the brand new ride line in the set. The Nebula Knights from the manga that so many people were waiting for it to come out, and it finally came out. And you know what's the worst part? They removed my favorite secret rarity. What is this? The best part of the Youthquake secret rares was that they had the manga panels on the back. How could you stop doing that? Look! The cutest character of the entire manga uses this deck, and I got robbed. I literally am tilted. I can't believe they would do me like this. Anyway, let's talk about what the deck actually does before I tilt. Sirius is a young knight that grows up into a grade 1. She's basically Lucina, which is pretty dope. So when you ride her, she reveals the grade 3 Nebula Knight from your ride deck in order to search your deck for a Colianis, the specific Colianis, the grade 1/1, and call it to rear and shuffle your deck. The grade 1 Colianis says that when she boosts a grade 3 or greater Nebula Knight, she gets plus 2k, and you can discard 1. You can look at the top, reveal the top card of your deck. If it's a trigger unit, you choose an opponent's front or rear guard in the same column as her and retire it, and then put the revealed card to top or bottom of your deck. So you discard 1 for a potential retire, but you obviously want to make sure that you actually have a trigger on top before that, and this deck allows you to do that. The grade 2 Celius, she says that when you ride her grade 3 form over her, you Soul Blast 1, look at top 7, also says any Celius grade 3, so potentially more in the future. Look at top 7 for a Nebula Knight card and reveal it, add it to your hand and shuffle your deck. So that also means you can find Persona Ride, which is pretty good. And when this would intercept, if you have a Nebula Knight unit being attacked, then this will get plus 5k for that battle. So she fights for her friends. And then we have the grade 3 of Celius. So she says you choose 2 Nebula Knights in your drop and put them back to your deck. Choose a rear guard and then search your deck for a unit with grade +1 that is a Nebula Knight of that card. And then you call it over that original card and shuffle your deck. So you're not actually plussing, you're just like leveling up your units, which is very Fire Emblem. I like this, you know, I definitely do appreciate it. And when she attacks, you can boss 1, choose a column, stand all Nebula Knight rear guards in the column. And for that turn, if you Persona Road, you can also choose a trigger unit from your hand and discard it, and then look at the top cards of your deck equal to how many Nebula Knight rear guards you have in your field and rearrange it on top of your deck in any order. So if you have a full board of Nebula Knight rear guards, you get to look at the top 5 and rearrange it, which is pretty strong. That being said, you do minus for this. So it is like you're leveling up a rear guard, and you're also like, you know, you're doing 5 attacks or 4 attacks with this, I guess, but you are like looking at top 5 if you're Persona riding. But then what happens if you level up? So we did have the grade 1 Colianis. She can level up into the grade 2. The grade 2 says if this was placed over the grade 1, if your opponent's Vanguard is grade 2 or greater, counterblast 1, search your deck for a Colianis grade 3, call it on this card's circle and shuffle your deck. In the rear guard circle, if your Vanguard is a Nebula Knight, this unit cannot be retired by your opponent's effect. more on that later. The grade 3 Colianis says, if she was placed on the circle that the grade 2 Colianis was on, you can search your deck or drop for a Colianis grade 1, call it to back or rearguard circle, and if your Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, Soul Blast 1, and then look at the top 2 cards of your deck, put one to hand and put the other on top or bottom of your deck. So it's like you're having to CB1 and Soul Blast 1 for the full effect in order to get another card up into the field. So you will use this to return 2 Nebula Knights back to the deck in order to then call this. We'll then CB1 and call this. We'll then Soul Blast 1 to call the grade 1 behind her maybe, and then also allow you to add a card to hand. So it's like a long-winded plus. And when she attacks, if your Vanguard's a Nebula Knight, for that turn she get plus 5k, so she's doing okay in power. And at the end of the turn, you can choose a grade 2 or lower Nebula Knight from your drop and call it to the same circle as she is on as a rest. So that can call the grade 2 Colianis, who will then not be retirable by opponent's effects. And then next turn, you can basically use the Sirius to level up the grade 2 into the grade 3 again, who will then call out the grade 1 behind again. So it's really like fighting with your allies, super Fire Emblem. I love it, but obviously it's not for everyone. It also doesn't read the strongest, unfortunately, but you do have some support for discarding. So this card says if you discard from your hand this turn, or discard her, if your Vanguard's a Nebula Knight, she's also a Nebula Knight, you can call her to rear, and if you did, for that turn, this unit cannot attack, but she's a grade 1. And if your Vanguard's a Nebula Knight, you can put her to the soul from rear to look at the top card of your deck and put it on top or bottom. So not sure how much you're going to use that first effect unless you really want to like make sure you have triggers for the grade 1 Colianis. But otherwise, it's like just when discarded, she calls herself out, and that's like good enough, I think. The important thing is that there's also a promo. So this promo that comes with the 6th volume of Youthquake says you can play this from your drop and you bind it when you play it. So you can play it from drop or hand, by the way. So you bind it when you play it and then look at top 7. So it's like do one of the effect. Either look at top 7, call a card with grade equal to or lower than your Vanguard that is a unit, and to rearguard circle and shuffle your deck. Or if your Vanguard is a Nebula Knight, counterblast 1, look at top 3 cards of your deck, choose one, add it to your hand, choose one, put it on top of your deck, and then discard the rest. And then if your one's Vanguard's grade 3 or greater, choose 2 of your rearguards and give them plus 5k for the turn. This order is a very big game changer. So not having this in the set, it's a bit unfortunate, but this does release the same day as the set, and this feels like it must be a Nebula Knight. So it's hard to consider the deck without this promo. So like without it, my rating of this deck is pretty low, but with it, it's like this plus is 2, you know, just off of that. So it does feel like it's very, very important. And there's also one more double rare we haven't talked about, which is the Hajana. So during your turn, if your rearguard during your main phase was retired or was put to soul, she gets plus 5k. If your opponent's Vanguard's grade 3 or greater, she gets plus 10k. So she's a strong attacker. Also love that we have a Horse Knight here as well, very Fire Emblem. And then once per turn, when she's boosted by a Nebula Knight and attacks the opponent's Vanguard, Soul Blast 1, discard 1 again, and then look at the top, reveal the top card of your deck. If it's a trigger unit, choose an opponent's rear guard in the front row, bind it, very strong form of removal. And then if it's not a trigger, you choose an opponent's back row rear guard and bind it, and then the revealed card goes on top or bottom of your deck in whichever you want. So this card does feel like it's one of the big carries. So this one will basically allow you to plus, this one will give you strong removal, and these will be like your 2 main attackers. You can also put back a grade 1 from this effect in order to call out the Hajana as well, in case you already have the Colianis. But this one does feel like it's the MVP in terms of removal, right? So I really haven't thought about the build for this deck, but I definitely do want to build this because I like its aesthetics. It just reminds me of Fire Emblem, and for that reason I do quite like it. But man, this Keter section is taking a while. Let's go through the last few cards remaining here. Generically, it's a lot of the same as the other nations. The 5k power and shield gainer when you damage check a trigger. This is when your back row unit attacks. For that turn, this gets plus 5k, and you may soul charge 1 once per turn. Also drawn by Kairu Deluxe. This card is kind of interesting. On attack to Vanguard, Energy Blast 4, bot deck an opponent's rearguard is kind of a pesky, I mean not kind of, it's a very pesky form of removal, just with a very heavy cost, but could see play in like specific meta, so I would definitely like pick up this as well just in case. This guy is like back row, the boost and 2k gainer, but you have to have like 5 or more units, and your opponent has to be grade 3 or greater. This order is like look at top 3 cards of your deck, rearrange them on top in any order. It's like, I guess, is that for Nebula Knights? But it feels kind of mid considering it doesn't actually plus, you just lose a card from hand. This is the when you play a Blitz order, Energy Blast 2, move this to Guardian Circle and get plus 5k shield. And then you also have the on attack if you're Persona riding, get 10k, and if you put a card with the, oh, it's like actually quite rough. It's like if this turn you looked at the top card of your deck by an effect, you can put a card with the same name as this from your hand to your soul for this to become crit 2. So the condition is a bit more tough. So again, this feels like kind of situational, and also, I mean, Keter maybe has an easier time to get 2 copies of the same card in the hand. And then finally, Undercover got support. This says, when placed on rear, if your Vanguard's an Undercover, do one of the following. Energy Blast 2, search your deck for the order and add it to your hand, which is pretty good. You want to get 4 of those ASAP, but Energy Blast 2 does cost a little bit because you do Energy Blast a lot in this deck. And otherwise, you can count almost 1, choose a card from your Undercover gauge and put it to face up. And if it's a Undercover, you can add it to your hand. And if it's not, you put it back to face down, basically. So you only really use that when you know that is an Undercover, right? But it's pretty good. Order Searcher is definitely appreciated in this deck, I think. And that's it. Keter took a while to talk about. I think it's also kind of a 4 to 5 as well this time. Nebula Knights maybe dog it down to a 3 a little bit. I do feel like all the decks are pretty decent. The generic is really good, I think, for Keter, but I think all the decks are like half decent. Like Minerva's gonna be pretty decent, like strong decent. Okay, let's just say Minerva will be pretty strong. Azel, I think, will be strong, but it will depend, I think, on like early meta to see if this deck picks up or not. Nebula Knights with the order are like a decent deck. Without it, it might be a little bit tough. Moving on to Stoicheia, this nation, ooh, this one is definitely very carried by its generic. Luckily, it's another nation with only 3 triples, because goddamn, otherwise I'm yapping for way too long in this video. We do have a new deck, which is Belger the Sky Ruler. Miltai cooked up a very interesting deck that I did have a chance to play against that I don't really think is that strong, and I do think that Leonard Mask is way better, but the generic for Stoicheia is insane. Let's talk about Belger first though, just so we get that out the way first and foremost. The starter is the Enos the Bouncer. I actually know a guy called Enos, and he is built like this, so pretty cool. The grade 1 is Juggler the Fighter. Jugra the Fighter. When it's ridden over by the grade 2, you can discard 1, reveal Sky Ruler grade 3 from your ride deck, and then search your deck for a non-sentinel 6,000 or lower power grade 1 and call it to rear and shuffle your deck. Discard 1 on ride? Ooh, that's pretty tough, especially in this deck. But of course, this can search you Mushroom, but the main card it wants to search is the Follower Rabbits. Follower Rabbit says, for each copy of this on your rearguard circle, it gets plus 1k, including itself. And when you call it, you can discard the up to 1 card from the top of your deck, and then you can reveal Sky Ruler grade 3 from your right deck. If you did, or if your Vanguard is Sky Ruler, then you can discard 1 to search deck for another copy of this, call it to rear, and shuffle your deck. Alternatively, if you pay this cost with Counterblast 1 and discard 1, you can search your deck for 3 of these instead of 1. So you fill up your deck with 4 of these. You call out all 3 of them when you call 1 of them from your ride line, and then they all give each other plus 1k, so they become 9ks basically because they include themselves. And then you use aggressive orders, because there is an order that says all of your 5k original power units get plus 10k, and if their attack hits, goes back to hand. So you can make everything hit for super huge, and this deck has to go second. So this deck has to go second, and then use that order in turn 2, but on turn 1 you also need to use Mushroom to like have a rush aggro turn. The grade 2 of the ride line is actually pretty mid from what I remember. Where is it again? It's this guy. El Cool the Smasher. When ridden over by Sky Ruler, Soul Blast 1, look at top 5 of your deck, choose 1, discard it, shuffle your deck. After that, choose a grade 2 or greater unit card from your drop and add it to your hand. You don't really have a lot of those in this deck, so it really feels like a pretty, like it's kind of designed for this, but the build that's being tested right now does not run this, I think, which is kind of interesting. Belger himself says if your drop is 10 or more, he gets plus 5k power for your turn, and then if you have 20 or more drop, he gets plus 15k instead, but not your front row, only himself. Can almost 1 to look at top 2, put 1 to hand and discard the other one, so he builds up the drop himself a little bit. And the other battle, he attacked the Vanguard, Kamos 1, and either stand a column, or if your opponent's Vanguard grade 3 or greater and your drop is 15 or more, you stand all of your rear guards. So you basically want to go second with this deck, you want to have 15 drop on turn 3 with this deck, and then you want to just like win really fast. So if you don't, you can only do 4 attacks, but optimally it's like you do 3 attacks turn 1, 3 attacks turn 2, that puts you to 6, and then 5 attacks on turn 3 puts you to 11. If you don't win by the 11th attack, you probably lose. This deck ends turn 3 with like 4 cards in hand. It's actually kind of crazy. So in terms of the cards that aren't run, so we can look at the other Belger stuff. So this thing is like when you guard with it, if your Sky Ruler Vanguard's grade 3 or greater, Soul Blast 1 gets 5k shield. If your drop is 15 or more, gets 15k instead. You're not playing this, unfortunately. This thing says if your Vanguard is a Sky Ruler grade 3 or greater, if your drop is 10 or more, this gets boosted and plus 5k. You're not running this either. And then this triple rare says when she's placed on rear outside of by unit card ability, you can retire a different named rearguard from her to search your deck or drop for a card with the same name as her, call it to rear, and if you search your deck, you shuffle your deck. Start of battle phase, if your Vanguard is Sky Ruler grade 3 or greater, you mill the top card of your deck, and then until the end of your opponent's next turn, this gets plus 5k power, plus 5k shield, and if you have 15 or more drop, it gets another 5k power, 5k shield. So the clone effect is pretty good because you can like retire a token basically in order to call out another copy of her, so deck thins, and then you get to use 2 of her in order to like have 2 20k attackers that are 15k shields that are basically kind of annoying for your opponent to take out because they keep that base power in your opponent's turn too. But that's not how this deck is being built. It's being built as turbo aggro Leonore masks that Leonore masks does her job better. So I'm not really sure. I don't rate this deck very highly, as you can probably tell by my tone. What I do rate very highly is the generic for Stoicheia. So this card, Harvest Elf, says when placed from hand outside of battle phase on rear, Soul Blast 1, call a plant token. That's already okay. But back row rearguard circle, she's a 5k grade 1. If your opponent's Vanguard's grade 3 or greater, she gets plus 5k power in both players' turns. So she's a 10k grade 1, but she's 5k base power. That's important for that order we mentioned earlier. And then at the end of battle that she boosted, you retire 2 rearguards in the same column as this unit to draw a card. So that means that, for example, in a Station, you can retire the column with the plant token that you attack with like the 4th or 5th attack of the turn in order to draw a card. And also it's like you're retiring a plant token, so it's fine. You can also revive this with Alvina next turn too. So it really is that good. So this card being able to like make plant tokens while also being a 10k booster while also drawing you cards just feels really good. Like really good card economy in a generic. I definitely think if you're Stoicheia main, pick up 4 of these. This feels like it could be used in virtually everything. In terms of other archetypes that got support, there's a bit of Stoicheia support. This double rare says if you play a Jujutsu, what was it again? If you play a Sutra Order, Energy Blast 2 until the end of your opponent's next turn, this unit cannot be chosen by your opponent's effects and gets 5k power, 5k shield. So not too bad considering you can restand this. And then end of your turn, if your Vanguard is a Stoicheia grade 3 or greater, you can choose one of your other rearguards and retire it, and then choose a Sutra card from your drop and add it back to your hand. This literally feels like a better version of the grade 1 promo we got in Skyride, not in Skyride, in Youthquake a while back, because that one had to like put back 2 of the same name thing, I think, whereas this one can just let you just take 1, which usually that's all you really need. So really like this girl. I think she's really good for Stoicheia. I was playing that deck quite recently, so I do rate her pretty highly. Mythiarch got this really cute thing. Look at this little creature, little cat. In back row rearguard circle, if you have 3 or more Mythiarch rearguards, this unit cannot be chosen by opponent's effects. And during your ride phase, if your Mythiarch grade 3 radio was placed, or if your opponent discard a card from their hand by one of your card effects, Energy Blast 3 and put this to soul from rear, to search your drop for a card with a different name from him that is a Mythiarch unit card and call it to rear, and for that turn give it 5k. So this lets you like get back your other Mythiarchs, like that grade 2 Delphina that was reprinted recently. So, but that seems pretty okay. I don't think this really changes where the deck stands though in the meta, but he's a cute little creature. And then the other generics are kind of the same as before. Damage trigger, like your opponent's trigger, 5k power, 5k shield gain. If you revive something in the same column as this thing, this gets 5k for the turn. This thing's kind of cool. If you stand this unit by your card effect, Energy Blast 3, choose one of your other units, and for that turn, this and that unit get plus 5k, both. That sounds pretty okay. It's like little Flagwork support. It's also like Sky Ruler support, anything that restands support basically. This is one of those 2k plus boost gaining grade 3s. The order for this one is you choose a rearguard until your opponent's end of next turn, cannot be chosen basically, and cannot be moved outside of rearguard circle. So it's kind of resist. This is one of the rearguards that moves to guardian circle and play blitz order. This thing's kind of interesting. End of battle attacks. If it's the 4th or more battle of the turn, Soul Boss 1 retire this. Choose one of your other rearguards, give it plus 10k. Could see this in like a very aggressive 5 attack deck maybe, just to like really push power, especially because the 10k is for the turn. So if you can do more than that and like more attacks, this could be something that's worth it. This card is like when she attacks, she can get plus 5k. End of battle, she retires herself. But if you played an order this turn, she goes to soul instead. 18k attacker that provides soul is like, I guess. Can't think of anything that would be played in. And then finally, the get 10k if you are persona riding, and if this turn you revive something from drop, you can put a card of the same name as this to soul to become crit 2. Again, these generics definitely feel like they have the most room to be explored with, so I do hope they are good down the line. Stoicheia for me, 3 out of 5, I think. I think a lot of the older archetypes supported didn't really get anything too game-changing in terms of support, just like decent little quality of life. The generic carries that rating, by the way. Even 3 out of 5 is carried by this. Without this card, it'd be like a 2, I think. So overall, pretty average time for Stoicheia this time around, for a change, I guess. But the nation is definitely eating well with these carrots. And that is it. That has been my first impressions of this entire set. Another 2-hour banger of a first impressions video. Hope you guys are enjoying this while I'm probably on my flight to the Philippines. Of course, there will be box opening and of course content for this set too. And of course, also some set 8 content coming for you guys for English soon as well. I'm really curious to see if we'll get a big restriction list, or if to really shake up the meta though, because I do feel like stuff like Heart Ruluru and like Daikaiser do have potential, but I do feel like the meta needs to have a little bit of a power reset and get Elitaglima out of here. With that though, that's gonna be it for me today. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked the video, give it a like, and if you haven't already, please do subscribe. Otherwise, I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.